Welcome to another edition of Trucking with ProMiles podcast. As usual, joined by the coolest cat in the transportation industry, Tony Stronchek, as well as our special guest and co-worker, Robert Smith. Gentlemen, like most industries, the trucking and logistics sector face an increasingly evolving cybersecurity landscape as more operations become integrated with computers. As you well know, Robert, recent surveys have shown of businesses, including the transportation industry, about 25% of companies now have reported their companies have been the victims of cyber attacks. And nearly half of those incidences, have taken place in the last 12 months. The attack space, where a bad guy can find opportunities and get into your system, that space, as we're going to hear in the podcast today, has frighteningly expanded with the use of technology and all the newer gizmos and such that are put into your trucks and vehicles. So with that as a backdrop, Tony, introduce our special guest today, Robert Smith.
Well, first of all, let me let you guys know that Robert is a good friend, but he knows a whole lot more about cybersecurity than I ever could. But a few years ago, we got really lucky and met this kid that said, "Look, I know all this cyber stuff, and I could come help you guys as your chief security officer and make sure that you guys are compliant out there." And but one thing led to the other. We went through a few guys that, to be honest with you, were just a bunch of waste of time, and then we found Mr. Robert Smith. And I would love to introduce you to our audience, Robert. And he's an amazing friend. He's one of the executive vice presidents of my organization now. Just to you, Robert, tell us a little bit about where you came from and why in the world are you doing cyber with ProMiles?
Sure, Tony. Thank you for the warm introduction. I don't know if I deserve those great words, but I'm happy to be here. Like you said, cybersecurity, being a part of that, and starting off in the industry, really from my perspective, when I first got started, I didn't know a thing about cybersecurity. 12, 13 years ago, I was actually in a completely different field and had, just luck on my side. And somebody said one day, "Hey, do you want to do this cyber stuff?" And I was like, "Wow, that's really cool. It sounds like a lot of fun." And, 13 years later, I've gotten to do security testing, pen testing for organizations, consulting. I've gotten to work with really brilliant folks, great teams of people who really know their stuff and are, just a testament to their, trade in the industry. And so, yes, once we, got together and we started working together, here we are, now talking about cybersecurity in the transportation and logistics industry. And so I've been around for about 13 years now, and the years just keep coming, luckily. And, every year it's like you're just learning new things, getting to see new things in this space. And so it's always exciting to be a part of this industry and get to talk to everyone about it.
Let's start right here,
Well, I
Robert.
know. Hey,
Yeah.
Stephen, before you go anywhere, there's something very important we need to talk about Robert. One, he's out of Georgia. Okay. Georgia, the state of Georgia around Atlanta. Okay. So when you guys are trying to search this guy and look him up on the internet and all that and do your own cyber attacks against Mr. Robert Smith, you'll know who he's from. But something that really got me when I first met Robert is that Robert understands more than just cybersecurity. Robert became, part of organization to help us with security. But the more I learned about, what Robert's history was and what he knows and what he doesn't know, it was so cool. Robert can help us with marketing. Robert can help us manage our people. Robert could help us when we were trying to decide on how to design new software things. So his mind is so much further out there. And it could be because I don't know if you guys can see all the gray on my face and no gray on Robert's, but he's younger than I am. And, I've been doing this for a while. I'm 53 now. And, cyber has always been this really cool word to me all these years. But, to how do we get involved with what we have? Well, you know what we did? We got start dealing with all these government agencies back in the 90s. And we started realizing, all they wanted was we need a system, we need to get it out there. But, there wasn't a lot of cyber attacks. A lot of this stuff just wasn't known. But through the years, because of all the responsibilities that we have to host and support all these big systems for the permitting and the DOTs and all that out there, we have to be secure. So over the years, I hated cybersecurity because every time I turned around, somebody was finding ways to penetrate. Somebody was finding ways to get into our systems and lock things down. And so the state government agencies are like, hey guys, we're going to have to make you guys all compliant. What's this compliant mean? Well, they call it SOC 2. All I could tell you, it feels like being punched in
Mm.
the face. That's what SOC 2 is. Okay. They just hit you in the face and say, here's where you're screwing up. Go rewrite all your software. And, because if somebody hacks into this, they can down everything. I hated it. But you know what? It's nothing but common sense. It really is. And through the years, we've been forced to be compliant. We've been forced to have other organizations try to hack in our systems to prove that we're not right. I hate that. But guess what? It's reality. And we need that. We need somebody out there in this industry to open their eyes and realize that I don't care how big you are, what systems you're running. I don't care if you only have one truck or you got 10,000. Cyber attacks are real. Okay. We hear it all the time. And how many of you people out there have got your ID? Somebody took your identity from you, and now you got all these credit card debts. It's the same thing. It's just much bigger and worse when you're talking, software. And if I'm the software out there running and permitting, making these huge loads go across the state, well, guess what? If I was some cyber attacker, or I was some other country wanting to hurt America, I'm going to go after the infrastructure. I'm going to go after those trucks. I'm going to make you quit moving freight. Why? Because I saw exactly what happened in 2020. In 2020, when COVID hit, things got crazy. So crazy. Well, guess what? This cyber, it's going to make it 10 times worse. So that's why we got into it. We were forced to, not that I wanted to. We had to do this. But then I realized that every bit of our partners out there, every bit of the integrations we do with other folks, they were a lot worse than we were on security. You know, they wasn't even worried about it. Well, now they all are worried about it. They're either public traded companies, they're invested by certain organizations. So they want to make sure that they're stable. We do not want our technology to shut down. And so when we decided to go after this world internally, because we had to, we finally realized, and this is where Robert just shines, is like, how can we help my buddies, my friends, my partners? I've got partners out there, hundreds of them that I've had for 20 or 30 years. How can I help them and help protect what they're doing with the same customer that we have together? Well, I'm going to help them with all this knowledge. I was forced to have to do this. If I went public traded, I would have to do the same thing. They're just making sure you're doing the most common sense pieces. So, Robert, I mean, when you look at this stuff, what the hell is all of this cyber stuff? What is it really? What are people doing that we're trying to protect? What are we trying to block
Sure.
for
Thanks,
the
Tony.
average Joe out there? Because most people don't understand cyber.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, first off, let me clarify. I actually won't punch anyone in the face when it comes to cybersecurity. So I just want to be clear that's not in the arsenal of things that we do. I don't punch people in the face for cybersecurity. But when we look at the industry and the things that people should be doing, and especially within the space that we're working within, transportation and trucking, it's not that anyone's been doing anything wrong per se, or that there's people that are knowingly going out of their way to not be more secure. I think it's just that with the, like you said, the rise of new technologies and these new integrations and these partnerships and these things that we're doing, we're now starting to see that because we're more connected, because we're more open, we now have to be more secure. And like you said, people ask, well, what in the world is that? What does that even mean? And really, if you want to narrow it down to its simplest form, it's we're looking at how we do business as individual organizations, and we're determining how do we reduce risk? How do we put ourselves in a position, just like if you eat an apple a day, you drink a lot of water, you try to stay in shape, you reduce the likelihood that you're going to have issues later on down the road. Now, we all get to a point in time where something will happen. We will have a problem, something will come up, but if we're healthy and we've minimized that risk, we're able to get through that period and then come out on the other side and recover. Cybersecurity is a lot like that. When we work with organizations and we look at how they're doing things, we say, okay, we take into account you've been doing this for a long time, 15, 20 years. So let's look at how we're doing things and let's come up with a plan to reduce that risk. Let's have less exposure here. Let's put agents on these things so that if you do have an attack, we reduce that impact. And like you were saying earlier, Tony, let's look at your systems that are internet facing, and let's do what the bad guys would do and just see if we can get into something, see what we can expose. Better for us to find it, better for the doctor to find a problem than for me to find it myself and it's too late, right?
Hmm.
So it's better. So in that aspect, when we just talk holistically about cybersecurity and what we're doing, and we put it in its simplest form, we want to reduce risk to organizations, to our partners, and ultimately to the clients they serve and to the nation that they serve if they're moving freight and doing those types of things. And that's at the core of what we want to do as an organization or with cybersecurity is we ultimately want to reduce risk, make it palatable for you. As if you're an owner operator, if you're managing multiple partnerships, whatever the case may be, whatever your business is, we want to make sure that when you go to bed at night, you say, okay, I'm at least aware of where I could have problems, or I now know where I might have had problems and I've implemented solutions to reduce impact or reduce risk. And ultimately, we just want to build an informed community, informed partners, again, informed clients that sleep a little bit easier knowing that they've got somebody who's got their back and that they're aware of what actually could happen or might happen, if they were to be a victim. And ultimately, that's cybersecurity in its minimalist form is reducing risk, and that's what we hope to do.
So, to back up a little bit, Robert, and set the context for this podcast, I
Mhm.
want to tee it up for you to at least tease what we'll come back to later, and that is the exciting news of ProMiles opening up a new cybersecurity division under your leadership. But Tony admitted something in his opening that I thought was pretty humble of him. But I think it sets the context for our conversation here. And that is, and you and I talked about this yesterday, Tony, one of the most brilliant minds, right, in the trucking software industry, admitted he and Tim didn't know anything about cybersecurity really when it came to protecting his company, ProMiles Software. And so, for those listening out there, Robert, just speak to them in the context of if they're an owner, they're a president, they're an executive. With all due respect to them, they're really not the right person uh, to be making these decisions, at least solely, right? They need to turn to their cybersecurity, their IT team, or a trusted consultant like ProMiles. So go ahead and make the brief announcement if you would.
Sure. Yeah. So, working with Tony, um, indicated, hey, we see a need. We understand. I mean, we had a need. We wanted to, get into the mindset of being more proactive and doing these things. ProMiles had some things they were doing before that. I mean, this wasn't the Wild West by any means, but they had been impacted in a way that organizations were saying, hey, you need to have leadership that handles cyber. You need to be doing these things. And so they proactively went out and said, okay, we're going to do that. And they engaged in the community. They found a practitioner, and here we are today. Um, you know, at the owner level, at the president level, like you were saying, Stephen, the biggest thing is that you all are making decisions based on risk. You're making a business decision. Do I want to do X? Do I want to do Y? Do I want to pursue a new technology? Do I want to do these integrations? Do I want to expose these things or whatever the case may be? Those are decisions you're making. But the job of us, the practitioner, is to help you be informed, right? And what that means is you don't know what you don't know. And so that is where folks like us, ProMiles Cyber, or the industry is providing that high level feedback to say, hey, yes, if you want to do this, let's just talk about these things you might want to consider from a cyber perspective. Or hey, you haven't been doing these things, let's talk about some ways that we can maximize that risk reduction. And then typically what happens is okay, they give the green light. They say, "Yeah, you've got my vote." And then they get you in touch with the folks that can support those decisions, implementation, the more nitty-gritty technical. How does this impact my IT team? How does this impact my end user experience? Owners don't necessarily get in the weeds and go, okay, if we install this thing, it's going to impact these 500 users. They're not likely going to get in the weeds, but they have people who would want to know those things because they are making sure they're supported, making sure that they're having good user experiences. And so, yes, we ultimately, want to make sure that owners and presidents and VPs are informed and that we can talk to them about risk and talk to them about those things ultimately they're the ones that are going to make the decision as to whether or not they would interact with a practitioner or a professional. But then we're going to get handed off to other supporting parties in the organization whose jobs it is to implement technology, secure technology, and do things of that nature. If Tony were, doing web app testing or installing software and doing things like that, I would say that's probably not the best use of Tony's time, right? As an owner of an organization, and so like that, we aim to engage owners to make sure that they're informed and that they're aware of why these things are important, and then have a good relationship with their staff and folks as we work through securing their infrastructure and doing those types of
So
things.
stay tuned a little
Now,
bit
let me,
later. Yep.
Stephen, the one thing that I really, I want to make sure everybody understands is we started this business, or I started this back with Tim back in the early 90s. And I got in transportation when I was 19 in 1989. Our first computer was a Tandy 1000 Commodore machine. Okay. Didn't even have a hard drive. You had to put these big disk things into it, not the little disk, but the big floppy ones, the real ones. Um, we knew back then, we knew the vulnerabilities. We knew that we had guys on staff that could hack into systems to pull data down that we were looking for. Now, we didn't do anything wrong, back then. We were just a bunch of kids, working out of the office going, hey, check this information out that's on the internet. This is really cool stuff. Um, but we knew that, there's things you could do to make things happen over the internet. And so we did realize the vulnerabilities that were there. The problem is why would somebody come against ProMiles? Why us? Why would somebody try to have an attack? Well, back it was 1997, I think it was, when I first had my identity taken. And it caused me a year worth of my life to go clean up a lot of mess. Well, that was the first thing that showed me that, there are bad people out there. You can't just think everybody's good. They're not. And there's people out there that just are playing. These are kids. You know, when we were in our 20s starting this business, we were all a bunch of kids trying to do stuff that everybody says couldn't be done. And guess what? If I could hack into somebody's system, that's pretty cool. Look what I just did. You know, people do it for bad reasons. And we've, over the years, tried to make our systems as secure as possible. But there's a lot of common sense things that we wasn't doing, using the same username password for all the different logins and all the different websites. Well, if one gets taken and you get jeopardized, well, guess what? They're going to try everywhere they know you connect to with that same username and password. Well, now they've got, Dashlane and all these cool systems to help protect our passwording. Well, these are those common sense things in the world where don't give your username and password to people, right? You're not going to do that. But what if they just come take it? What if they do it, scrape it off your, just take a picture of your screen is all they do and get the copy of the picture and it shows them username and password because you want to see it on the screen. So there's a lot of things out there that are there to protect us and have been implemented over the years, whether or not we wanted it or not, for security. But it's scary. It's scary to know the type of people that could do this. And so through the years, we were forced because the government's like, you've got to be secure. You've got to be really good at what you do to protect our infrastructure. And so the rest of the transportation market, if I got a program that I wrote that's going to show me all the truck stops along the route, why would somebody hack into that? What is that going to do anybody any good? It's not. But what is going to happen is if they hack into that system and that system's hooked to somebody else's system that is important, hmm, now all of a sudden you've just opened up a big can of worms. And I think people in transportation needs to realize that we're human beings, no different than somebody working at a grocery store. And if that's the case, they need to protect them at that grocery store, just like I need to protect all of you when you go to our permitting sites. When you guys go to the state DOT things and you implement, you add your credit card information, your ACH, your banking data, you want to make sure that just not anybody gets it. And they're not looking for Tony. They're not looking at ProMiles to go after. No, these people across the water, the pond, they're looking at the state government agencies. They're looking at the DOTs. And that's what's, a couple of months ago, several states got hacked and they got in and took control of their video cameras and things like that. And and they've shown that they've been able to hack in far enough to shut things down that will cause our infrastructure to stop moving. We have to keep moving. We need those trucks hauling anything to keep moving. That's our infrastructure. We need that solution in that trailer to be mixed into this other to create the ammo we need to protect our country. So, no matter how little what you do, we need formula to feed the babies so they turn out to be great teenagers and amazing adults to protect our country. So, transportation is what any country out there would love to hurt our country on. And so if anybody's out there and you're listening and you're a trucking company, you're a driver, you're a lumper where you're going to help load and unload these trucks. Every one of you play a big role in this whole thing we call trucking. We all need to be secure because they could come through you, Mr. Owner Operator, and that app you have for Lowe's that's on your ELD or your device, if it gets jeopardized and it's talking back to Lowe's, you could just shut down Lowe's. And part of Lowe's is getting the material out there to build these pieces that we need to protect our infrastructure.
So stay tuned a little bit later in this podcast. Robert will tell us more about our new ProMiles Cybersecurity Division and why we, being in the trucking industry ourselves, are the right solution for trucking companies and logistics companies out there like you folks to provide this consultant work to you. But Robert, back to you, because my boss did tell me before this podcast he wanted you doing most of the talking. I'm just kidding. Um, Seriously, though, Robert, there are, unfortunately, a number of cyber threats right now attacking the trucking and logistics sectors. In fact, as I teased in the opener, and by the way, I was quoting from a recent Transport Topics article, there are several. Walk us through, Robert, just a few of those that are ongoing right now and recent in the trucking industry.
Sure. Not really wanting to name names, but the threats that we've seen and the things that we've seen impacting organizations are pretty much what we've had coming up over the years: ransomware, things of that nature. So there were two organizations recently that were victims of ransomware attacks, and one of those two organizations provided a form of ELD service, and that resulted in an outage where folks were concerned about being able to use those devices, move freight, do those things. And you know, from what I understood, there are only so many days that a person can use paper logs, that can do things on paper before there's an issue every 30 days. And so there was actual concern about, well, if we get beyond a week and we don't have access to this anymore, how are we legally going to be able to continue to move freight and do those types of things? And so, that's one instance where ransomware was of impact. You've talked
What
about,
is ransomware, Robert? I mean, what
oh,
does that
excellent.
mean? Ransomware. What
That
is
is
that?
an excellent question, Tony. That makes a lot of sense to ask. So ransomware is kind of in the name. It's a ransom. And what happens is an entity or a person interacts with an application, an email, some form of thing that has either this payload or a way to bring it in. And so let's say you got an email, Tony, and it's talking about, hey, I need you to immediately click this link or we're going to close an account. Right. And so you're panicking. You think, oh my goodness, I need to do this. I don't want to lose access to my account. So you click the link and then it downloads a payload. And the next thing you know, your files start to change on the computer. Things start to lock up a little bit. And then you realize there's a little text file on the desktop. You open it and it says, hey, we have encrypted everything that you've got. And if you
Uh-oh.
want it back, you owe us a Bitcoin or a half a Bitcoin or something like that. So, and typically what happens from that point is either A, that virus, that ransomware is, if you're, let's say Tony's connected to other things, like, oh, he also has access to these shares and these servers and these things that, there's always a connection to, or he's got his VPN open and he's connected to the data center. And by the way, Tony's a super admin for some reason on everything. And so now that one email that Tony interacts with causes that virus or that ransomware, because it can spread through the permissions he has. It gets into all these other servers and encrypts all these other things. And so when we talk about ransomware, it's not always that a person interacted with something. or that we're blaming an end user, in one of these instances that we've got articles on and things of that nature. But 9 times out of 10, it either comes in through some form of phishing, which is a person sending emails posing as someone else to try and get you to interact with things, or there is an exposure of a system that allows a threat actor, a person, to engage that system directly. And then after they get what they need, they encrypt everything to try to make some extra money. Um, so ransomware is a huge moneymaker for threat actors in the industry. I mean, you could look at a number of incidents over the last few years. It's not just a problem in transportation and logistics. It is a global issue from
Mhm.
small businesses. You could be a one person shop all the way up to a Fortune 100 company. These folks don't care. A lot of times they will just send mass emails to anybody and everybody that they can get it out to. And it's statistics at that point. It's okay, one in every 100 is going to click on this or interact with it. And that could be a person who's got access to a minuscule amount of data, or it could be a person who has access to an entire server center or a cloud, data farm or something like that. Any number of things, that would scale into. And so a lot of times, like you were saying earlier, Tony, it's not that these entities target you directly. They're just playing the numbers, right? They're just going to spray
Mhm.
and see what's happening. Now, that said, over the last 3 years, about when COVID came around, the focus on transportation and logistics has gone up substantially. The amount of ransomware attacks on this space have gone
Mhm.
up substantially. The focus on seeking out entities that are, like you said, doing these critical tasks and doing these things has increased substantially. Why? And again, we're not kicking people in the shins here. We're just saying that technology is now catching up to the transportation space. People are now implementing more interconnected trucks. They're interconnected devices. They're integrating back office systems with front of house systems. There's more that we're doing as we grow as an industry, as we introduce these new things. Now the risks that industries have been dealing with over the last 20 years, 15 years, because transportation and logistics is now getting new tech in and they're doing a lot of these new things and having to be open, having these APIs, all these other systems that are going to be in place, they are now becoming a little bit richer of a target, right? You can't do anything to a guy who's using paper books or tracking things. I can go and snatch the binder, but that's the extent of the data I
Mhm.
get. But when he's connected to other systems now, when he's connected to other trucks, to the back office systems, to accounting, to the folks that are doing all of the logistics, now he is a much broad he's got much broader access. Therefore, that payout or the things that these threat actors look for, it's much richer at that point. And so now we're
Right.
seeing an uptick in focused attacks and in focused efforts to do damage to this industry. And in turn, like you said, government entities, federal government, they're focusing on critical infrastructure, which includes transportation and logistics, things of that nature. And so now the pressure, we're getting it from both ends. We're getting it from the end of the threat actor who's making people's lives harder as they're attacking things and doing those things. And we're getting it from the other side where the regulators are saying, hey, we're now paying attention because we're seeing all this damage that this is causing. We can't let this continue happening. And so,
Right.
that's where we're at today with respect to kind of the risks in ransomware and all those things that we got into.
So, Robert, now that we've kind of set the tone of this, expound a little bit on the real world impact of this, and particularly, and just as importantly, the trucking industry response so far, or what the response should be. Maybe you can
Mm,
explore a couple case studies with us.
absolutely. So, as far as how we should be responding and what we're seeing, I will say that when we were first talking, Tony and I and other members of the ProMiles team about this space and do we have the ability to serve this space and do things in this space? I will say this. What we've seen is that the transportation industry as a whole takes cybersecurity and what's been happening lately very seriously. They want to fight
Yes.
back. They want to put their
Mhm.
gloves on and go toe to toe. And they want to step up and they want to make sure that they're doing what's right and they're taking care of their organizations, their clients, and doing those things because they realize that it's not just them as a business that's impacted. If I have a 1,000 truck fleet and I'm down for 4 weeks, that's not just an impact to my bottom line as an organization. That ripple effect now impacts other organizations, families, it impacts businesses. And so they're taking it very seriously. You've got organizations like CISA and other government entities that are talking about how they're going to plan to, implement controls for the industry, how they're going to make services available for the industry as far as being able to monitor and protect their systems. And so I will say that the transportation industry as a whole, they're not going to take it lying down. They're not taking it sitting down. They actually recognize there's something that needs to be done, and they're willing to have conversations about that, and they're willing to take steps that are necessary and that make sense to protect
Well,
their organizations and their people.
Well, Robert, when you think of this, I mean, you talk ransomware, that's one thing. They can sit there and they could, find a hole in your firewall or something like that. And they can sit there and just send a request, one request, another request, another request. And all of a sudden they're using up all of my bandwidth, all my pipeline. They could be doing things such as just looking for any kind of files they can download, regardless what the file is. It could be patent information, it could be, emails, it could be anything that they're just trying to get their hands on. And because software's got so smart, it does the grunt work for them. So what's happening is there's software that you could go today and Google that I want to do the following thing. And then all of a sudden, all these software is available. You could go download this software somebody's created, and it's going to help you hack into another system. Now, this is just on the internet. Okay. So if I could do that and I can go find these things, what got me really scared is when I told AI, hey, AI, build me code to hack into the following website for the following reasons. And this is what I want out of it. The code it came back and showed me scared the living hell out of me because what it just did in seconds gave that guy that's 16 years old sitting behind that computer, is just learning and playing. All he's doing is playing. He's not trying to do anything wrong, but he just jeopardized or shut down a system that does do transportation or does do something that's going to affect somebody. But they're doing it so easy. So we've got to even be more protected now than ever because there's more people, there's more hackers, there's more people out there with the capabilities, and the technology's got so strong. So one thing we do have that's of value, like ProMiles, we're a Microsoft shop. So most anything and everything that we develop, we do it around Microsoft. Microsoft has done a really good job over the years, and we all have seen it. Used to be we all had our computers got hacked all the time. This all happened, that happened, and but Microsoft has really went out there and tried to build their own security here. Google, use Google email. Why? Because it's very secure. Why? They spend a lot of money protecting you. Well, that's the same thing ProMiles has done. We're protecting these other entities and we're trying to help these folks. But what's scaring me is if they could hack into these computers and they can do this ransomware and pay me all this money. But what makes it even worse, dude, we don't have time to go down. We don't have time to go clean up messes because it does affect things, slow things down, slow systems down, which now you don't get your permit as fast as you want. You've got to really look at this as it's here, it's been here. It's time to stick your head above the sand and realize just do something to protect you. So you mentioned agents, okay? An agent, what is that? What is an agent and why, I got 20 drivers. They all have cell phones. They also have ELD devices. Some have laptops. Then I've got my office. They've got, desktop machines. Oh, and I've got a network over here. And I got a phone system that is voice over IP. So that's hooked to the internet. Oh, yeah. We have an ordering system too that we use through Amazon and it's over here. And oh, yeah, my cousin built me these two programs that does the following stuff. And, all this it's like every machine, every device, everything has to be protected because if one device, it could be a watch, a Apple Watch device that causes it to get to your phone. So what's is this agent thing? Is this a guy that's going to literally go sit on your watch or go sit on your phone or your tablet or your computer? I mean, is this like a security guard, a guy with Homeland Security standing there going, you can't come in. What is that? What is that agent you keep talking about?
Sure. Thanks, Tony. So I think it's good to back up to and mention a term that you might hear, or at least you will start to hear when it comes to cybersecurity. So when we think about the protections we implement in an organization, we follow a principle called defense in depth. And what does that mean? Right? If I build, let's say, just a physical fence around my house, but you can open and close the gate, and I don't put any locks on it, and I don't lock my door at night. Yes, I have a fence. I have one layer that might keep certain things out, but somebody could easily open that fence, open the door, and they're in. So then on the house, I might install an alarm system so that if someone walks through the fence and they kick my door in, the alarm system goes off. And then what will that alarm
Hmm.
system do? It will notify law enforcement. They'll come and they'll do their thing. And so, you can keep going with those kind of analogies. You can do bars, you can have sprinkler systems, you can do all sorts of things for a home to maximize that reduction in the ability for something to do it harm. And so, an agent, when we talk about that in the context of security, typically we're talking about something like a detection and response agent, something that you can put on a laptop or a server or, possibly an ELD device, something of that nature. That if something is going on that it would be a risk or a potential impact, a negative impact to that device, it can typically stop it and say, "Hey, this doesn't look to be right. This looks to be a bad thing," and it will stop it. Right. So there are agents out there, we call them EDR agents, endpoint detection and response agents. That's in the name. It goes on an endpoint, it detects if something is going on, and it responds to that accordingly. Now,
Okay.
some people might say, well, that sounds a lot like antivirus. I've already got that. So that's covered, right? But this is a little more dynamic. It's a little more based on behavior, where something like antivirus, once something impacts you and hits you, then it's going to say, "Oh, by the way, this looks like it's bad. Let's stop it." But if I never do anything on that system, if I'm just running commands and looking at things and I'm testing for things and I'm there, but I haven't done anything like installed something, that's not going to catch it. Stuff like this agent that we're talking about, that will actually see activity and go, "Wait a minute, that doesn't look like your normal activity. That looks to be risky," and it'll stop it. Now, other things that we do in cybersecurity, you were mentioning, you keep talking about hacking and testing systems, but we as the good guys, we do the same thing, right? We just do it with permission and with consent and a good scope, and we say, "Hey, Tony, you've got this web thing out here hanging in the wind. How about we take a look at it and just make sure that there's nothing that's really easy for somebody to get through. Let's make sure that if you're using a firewall, that it's doing its job, that it's giving the IT folks alerts. Let's make sure that the things you've implemented are actually doing the things they should be doing, and the practices that you've got in place are effective."
An
And
external
so then
audit,
we send,
an external audit, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah,
And all companies
yeah,
go
Stephen.
through
Hmm.
that.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I mean, you can do that in security. Tony's kind of talking about this more direct, let's take the rifle and actually see where we can do some damage and get into things. And so we've got those capabilities. You're right. We've got the tools that a lot of threat actors will use. We've got the same, capabilities. We've got some of the same training. The difference between us and them is, we're going to do a point in time review of that. Somebody who's really their only goal is to get into a system and get money out of you, they've got nothing but time, right? They've got nothing but whatever their resources are, you know. So there's obviously that difference in how long we can spend on something, but we've got those same capabilities as the threat actors. And so we can do that type of review of systems as security professionals. We've got, like you said, agents where we can provide those protections. It's just when we work with these organizations in this industry, it's sometimes it's having that conversation, like you said, and just helping them to understand where the risk is at, why these things are important. And then if they decide to go a different direction and they don't want to do certain things, they're informed, they're aware, right? There's no, okay, well, it's, we did not say that these things could be a problem. It's just you have other things maybe in place that are reducing that risk, right? So, but agents in this case, there are agents out there that you can put on systems that do things above what antivirus does, that do above what normal tooling would do. And it's kind of like having a little automated person on your computer, it's a digital security guard that's going to keep an eye out and he's going to take anything out that would be problematic, on those systems. So to
Well,
answer the
well,
question.
Robert, that's only part of the problem, though. Now,
Right.
what you're doing is you're just an antivirus looks and says, "Oh, this virus has been detected. What it's doing, we now write scripts to say if anything does something like that again, it could be that virus, so we stop it." Okay, but this newer technology and this newer way of doing things is like, I'm looking at what's happening on the computer. This guy normally never opens up and changes this, and this in his controls. This guy, wouldn't be sitting there and automatically start hitting the server 1,000 times a second. How would this user do that? So it's looking at more logic of what's happening to say, whoa, whoa, this may not be bad, but it could be. Go take a look at it. So at that point, what the hell do these people do? Now my little agent pops up and says, "Hey, you may have a problem. I'm stopping it. Is this okay?" And you go, "Yeah, that was a good one. So yeah, let that go through." But how do these people do it? I mean, is there like people behind there that's looking at this stuff that says, "Okay, that just happened. So what should you now do?" Because warning them and telling them this could be a problem is one thing, but what do they do at that point? What do they do once they have a possible problem? What happens?
Mhm. Right. Well, a lot of these tools and capabilities are backed by what we call a security operations center. And this is where you've got guys and gals who are trained in being able to look for indicators of compromise, that are able to look through all this data. And a lot of times these agents will say, it will send what's called an alert to those folks. And a lot of times before the end user kind of, they might see something that pops up and says, "Oh, we blocked something." And that's already been sent to another party who reviews that data, looks at the what we call the attack pattern or the kill chain, and they'll say, "Oh, this is where it got stopped. This is how it got in potentially." And there's no longer a problem. Or this was quarantined or it was stopped, but there's a bigger issue maybe further up in this chain that we need to address and figure out. And so a lot of these solutions and platforms typically have the backing of cybersecurity professionals who review this data because, and this again, it's no disrespect to the end user, but if you had all of that data, Tony or Stephen, you might
Mhm.
look at that and go, "Well, let's ask Robert, or let's ask, the CISO, let's ask these folks." Like, you're not going to
Mhm.
look at that and make a decision based on certain things running. This code was executed, this thing happened, and it was killed. And you might go, "Well, okay, that's great. What does this all mean?" A lot of this stuff is backed by security practitioners and professionals that will 20 and a lot of times they're available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. There are folks in seats that when these things alert and come in,
Yeah.
they're looking at it then, because if you have an attack that's legitimate or something that is actually happening that is bad, you don't want to wait 8 hours until, one or two people come in the IT folks come in the next morning. They pull the console up, they're like they've got their 100 emails from the night before, and they dig through everything and they go, "Oh, we got a security alert." And then they look at it, by then it's lunchtime, and something or someone has been in your system for almost, 16 hours, right? The impact could be a lot greater than if you have someone who can look at it then, there, and stop it and figure it out,
Yeah.
you know?
So Robert, you've been making an excellent case for how ProMiles Cybersecurity Division can identify gaps through the external audit, as I suggested, implement solutions, future proof, I think is a word you use that I like, to future proof the trucking company. But walk our listeners through, particularly companies and carriers, how will that process start out when a trucking or logistics company reaches out to ProMiles Cybersecurity Division? Just kind of walk us through some details of how that process works out and what you'll actually be offering.
Sure. So the division is going to be offering services and capabilities that I would say are important at every phase of the life cycle, the security life cycle for an organization. So whether you're just getting started and you're really like not sure what it is you want to do, or maybe you've already got some implemented solutions or capabilities, but maybe you want to get a fresh set of eyes on those capabilities. Maybe you are looking to implement something different. Maybe your current systems are being managed in house, and you say, "You know what, we really want to take a lot of this responsibility away from these folks, give them more time to do the things they like doing, and let
Yeah.
someone else kind of focus on this and watch our back and make sure we're good." So the division itself, ProMiles Cyber, offers a combination of what we call consulting services and managed services, right? And the consulting services are really about informing the organization of risks that are there, providing them with security capabilities that otherwise they may not have in house, or providing an extra set of eyes on things. And like Tony was saying, whether it be hacking and pen testing, or hey, I've got this compliance thing. I've been hit with a notice. They're saying by the end of next year I have to have these things in place. I don't know where to start. I don't even have the time to read the email, let alone implement a net new set of capabilities. And so the division has the capability again to do that kind of external hacking, to do those internal external audits, like you were saying, Stephen, for security purposes, holistically help an organization understand where it's at. And then the other side of that is the managed service component, the managed security service component. And so we hinted at agents and things of that nature, but we offer really with our solutions. We sat down and we said, what makes sense? The industry as it is today is still maturing with respect to transportation and logistics. They're taking it very seriously. They're jumping in the ring. They want to start doing things to make sure they're shoring themselves up and that they're protecting themselves. So we looked at common ways that organizations are attacked through external applications, through things like email, of course, external connections, end user manipulation, and then if something gets on a system, you've got your server infrastructure, your endpoints that could be attacked or have problems. And so we said, well, understanding these kind of core areas and core concerns, what services could we offer to provide fundamental protection to an organization and reduce risk? And so we came to bear with managed services that cover everything from security awareness training, which I'm sure if you've been working in the industry for the last 5 years, you've gotten to sit through some awesome videos on cybersecurity, and you've had to sit down once a year and watch those types of things. So that for us was like a no brainer. We want to continue to make sure that the folks we partner with, we provide those types of solutions, because 9 times out of 10, you've got some mandate that says you have to do this type of training annually, right? So,
Hey, Robert, let me ask you something else. So when we do this for these folks, okay, somebody had asked me the other day, why? Why, sure, cybersecurity sounds cool. It's a need. Transportation has to have it. Why does Pro Miles, why us? Well, the way I explained it to the gentleman was we've had a lot of companies over the many years we've been doing this that we worked with for our compliance. And these organizations understood cyber attacks, they understood cybersecurity, they understood computers, they understood software, they understood all these holes. But the one thing that not any of them understood, including our first couple chief security officers we hired, they knew cyber, they didn't know trucking. And so once we started having to spend so much time teaching all these multi-billion-dollar cybersecurity groups that are out there helping the consumer and the bigger picture out there. When they came to us, we were spending more time teaching them what a dispatcher was. What is an ELD device? What is this? What is that? And it's like, if somebody that understood the lingo of trucking, transportation, logistics, they understood what is driver qualification, what is hours of service, what is fuel tax, what is IFTA, what is IRP, what does all this mean? Well, it all allows you to see where your risks are at and what risks are big, but it's very difficult for any of us in transportation to go find somebody that's going to help us with the cyber world that's already doing it in transportation. They're doing it everywhere else. I mean, watch your commercials. Yeah, you're sitting at home now, you're spending time, you're working from home. Start protecting yourself with Norton this and that, or this VPN this and that. You know what? That's because it's the big need of getting out there and protecting everybody, regardless of trucking or not. But us being transportation focused, us knowing about this vehicle connecting to that vehicle and these needs. I mean, we read those articles a while back. We had that conversation about how people took control of autonomous vehicles. Now, the guys that did it were guys that were going, we got these holes here that may cause these problems. Oh no, man, this affects almost every autonomous vehicle in the world right now. They went and started screaming, "Hey, world, hey, autonomous vehicles, y'all need to look at this. You need to know I can hack in you and I'm a good guy, but these other guys can shut these vehicles down as they're driving down the road at 75 miles an hour. They can control it, hit its brakes, and it stops. Okay. They can take that vehicle parked, make it start and move across the parking lot. Whoa, now we're getting kind of scary, ain't we? Look at the recalls that have been done on autonomous vehicles, cars for self driving. Even in California or Colorado alone, they've done it. Why? Because if it's manipulated in a way, you're not safe. So, guys in transportation, realize the future of this is going to be protecting your infrastructure, your equipment, your drivers, your shipper's commodity that's inside of that truck. It's your responsibility. You better make sure that that person in front of that wheel today, it's a driver. Today, you do driver qualifications, you get their medical card, you get drug tests done, you do all this to what? To make sure that all that's protected. This is no different. We're just moving the driver out of the way and saying now the computer's doing the work. Don't you want to protect that same information? Yes. So you better put something there. You better put something there to help protect this cool new technology that's going to help all of us.
Yeah, that's good points, Tony. And I think, I think this rolls into like why ProMiles ultimately sat down and said, we want to do cybersecurity. We want to have a division. And like you said, there are people out there that do cybersecurity already that have those capabilities. But far and few between do you have one that's got 30 years of experience in the industry that knows the
Mhm.
ins and outs of these different regulations, that understands kind of the hardships that these organizations face and the things that could impact them and the things that could be problematic, right? And so, we saw a need and a way to help protect the industry. We sat down and we said, we want to make an impact, we want to make a difference. And the way that we came up with that was through cybersecurity and having capabilities and offerings that we can sit down with an owner operator or sit down with an organization, and we don't have to learn the lingo. We don't have to be educated on all of the ins and outs of these different regs or things of that nature. We can just have a conversation about what's important and how we can help those folks and how we can implement solutions that are going to meet those needs. Um, and you know, this isn't going away, right?
Mm.
Cybersecurity technology, the way that we're moving, it's not going to get any less hard, right? And so we really feel that now is the time to start having the conversation about, hey, let's talk about how we can help you. Let's talk about how we can make things more secure. Let's have conversations, about your organization's capabilities and the way you're connecting to the things and the way you're doing things, and where might there be areas that you just might not have thought about that need to be secured
Mhm.
or that need to be tightened up. We can do all of those things from A to Z. And the future strategies and the things that we're seeing today, I mean, we see articles where they are talking about phishing attacks in transportation, they are talking about ransomware, and they are talking about how they're starting to address those things. But in a lot of these areas, when we look at the technologies they're talking about, when we're looking at the things that they're saying should be done, we've already been talking about these things for well over 10 plus years in the industry. Right. And
Mhm.
so
Yep.
again, it's not anyone's fault that we're not ahead of the curve on this. It's just it's never been a priority. It's never been a concern because it wasn't impacting anybody. It wasn't causing problems. Now that it is, now that we're seeing an uptick in ransomware, we're seeing an uptick in attacks directly against these companies. We're seeing the impacts that those cause to um, not just them again, but the ripple effect that that has on the economy and other areas. We see a need as an organization, as ProMiles Cyber, to step up and to start working with our partners and start working with organizations to help them to understand the risks, like we've said, and to offer solutions to those problems should they be present. So
Yeah.
we're
Well,
really
Robert,
excited about those pieces.
I know positively, Robert, that once we started really looking at our systems and looking at how we can better things, the more concerned that I got of going, man, this could be bad. This could be dangerous. And so I'm just so grateful that we were really pushed years ago to have to start doing this, because now that things have really got that bad, we are protected. You know, we've got these things. We've made these partners that have spent years building technology to do this. We're not building all this technology ourselves. We've partnered with the best of the crop that isn't going to go to the market direct, isn't going to go to this industry. They don't even understand it. And when we explain to them, there's millions of trucks with computers in the inside that's keeping up with their hours of service and how it works, these people are just blown away. But it's the non-knowing, but doing something now is the key. You know, don't wait until you have a cyber attack. Don't wait until your truck is taken control of and you lose a great driver and he loses his family loses him and his life. Do it now. Start protecting your personal infrastructure, your piece, and that's how we're all going to help each other. We all just do our part and talk. You know, if you see something that don't look good, see something ain't bad, you know, talk to your people. And if you don't have people, then talk to organizations that do. Trust me, they've been there, they went through it, they spent millions of dollars, you know, going, why do we have to rewrite all of this software? Well, because you've got all these vulnerabilities. Yeah, but I wrote this software 3 years ago. That's right, Mr. Smith. And 2 days later, guess what? Now there's a new vulnerability. And you know what they're doing? They're putting it on the internet. They're putting it on freaking TikTok.
Mhm.
Hey, you want to learn to hack? Look at TikTok for a minute. Why? TikTok gets them off. They all bad. Let's remove them. Now the video is not available. But it was long enough that got a million people excited that there's a new vulnerability in SQL. Wait a minute, really? Well, heck, let's see if we can break in at Bob. We ain't got nothing else to do. And they hack into things. So even though you think you're protected today, even if you have pen testing and you have all these studies done in your system today, don't stop. You got to keep doing it, because a month from now, a day from now, an hour from now, there is something there that has opened up a door that you don't want to be open.
As we, Robert, begin to wrap up this discussion, and this is only the first of many discussions, Robert will have several mini blogs and posts and video posts on the ProMiles Cyber website, which we'll ask you to share in just a minute, Robert. But as you kind of close out and sum up here, I just want to tell you, I personally have learned so much from you and now Mark, uh, with regards to the importance of cybersecurity in trucking companies and trucking software companies. And one of the many things I've learned, and hopefully trucking companies out there are learning or will learn, is, as Tony kind of alluded to earlier, this whole cybersecurity thing isn't just about writing a couple of fancy policies for our policy manual and throwing some mandatory training at us. It is, as you've said previously, it's about, and this is where your cybersecurity division comes in play, continual vigilance, proactive measures in cybersecurity on your division's behalf of trucking companies. Kind of summarize that for us. It's a daily thing, isn't it?
Absolutely, Stephen. So no organization with a single person can do all of the things they need to do on an ongoing basis to ensure optimal risk reduction. We're just at a point where, and now there might be organizations that have the capital to bring in-house all of the expertise, all of the tools, all of the things that they need to have infrastructurally to do that. But what we found is that if you work with an entity like ProMiles Cyber, who will take care of these things on your behalf, that cost is typically, 10 to 20% of what you would be paying. I mean, I've seen
Should we go
numbers.
up on our rates then, Robert? If we're saving them that much, maybe I thought we could make a lot more money at this. But
I think ultimately, what we see here in the industry is that um, when you work with an organization like ProMiles Cyber, we have the tools, the partnerships, the capabilities to again take that burden away from technical teams. And some teams, a lot of times you might have IT teams that don't necessarily want to give those things up, or they feel that it's infringing upon their responsibilities or it makes them feel bad. But ultimately, that's not the goal, right? We're about ensuring, again, optimal risk reduction and response, the ability to have subject matter experts available. That is their focus. Cybersecurity is the only thing we do, right? We're not concerned about patching systems as far as like making sure they reboot. We're not doing backups. We're not doing all of these other things that the IT teams are doing, right? We solely want to focus on cybersecurity. We solely want to focus on making sure that things are protected, detected, that we're responding accordingly, that we're taking things, uh, offline or out that are bad. And again, from the compliance standpoint, if you need again those tests done, the external audits on a regular basis, internal audits, if you just want to say, hey, as an organization holistically, how are we doing? Have somebody come in and review us. Tell us where we're missing stuff. Tell us where we're doing good. Tell us where we can maybe reinforce a few things, right? That's what we're doing. And that vigilance, it's nonstop, right? If you've got folks who are splitting their efforts and focusing on cybersecurity 1 day a week and looking at alerts 1 day a week, that is that risk level that just goes through the roof. That exposure time goes through the roof. The
Yep.
amount of damage that can be done goes through the roof. And so we are here as essentially a sentinel, as a partner, to constantly be looking out for an organization, to constantly be making sure that, if Tony is a client, right? And Tony says, you know what, I've got a question. I don't know what to think about this new thing. They could email us. They could say, hey, Robert, ProMiles Cyber, what's going on with this? What should we be concerned about? What should we
Yep.
be talking about? Hey, you know what? You've got some great questions. Let's sit down. Let's get a call going for 30 minutes and let's talk about it. Let us help you out. Let us work you through it. We want to be a partner in the process of cybersecurity. We want to be someone you can rely on. And so it's a constant thing that has to be done. Again, 24/7, 365. And, they don't take a lot of holidays from what I understand when it comes to threat actors and things of that nature.
So this is a
That's
good
when they do
segue.
most of their work is on the holidays.
Before I turn back to you, Tony and Robert, for some closing summary thoughts, good segue, Robert, to and I'm sure we'll probably be posting this on our podcast here and the website and all, but the website address, and then I'll give the 800 number. Robert,
Sure.
your website
You can
is.
definitely check us out at ProMiles. Yep, my website is ProMilesCyber.com. So that's just the ProMiles, but you put cyber on the end of it.com. And I will say that if you're checking our site out, don't forget to check our insights out. We've got a lot of blog content and informational pieces up there. So you don't have to call me if you want more details. No pressure. Just go check our site out, do some reading. And if you want to get in touch with us,
And
info at
for those who are
ProMilesCyber.com.
going to go to your website, it's a pretty cool looking website. Just kind of give a quick overview of how potential customers can best surf your website.
Sure. So if you're just looking to get some gradual, just basic details, you really don't want to get into any of the other pages. On our first page, you're going to have kind of an overview of who we are, why we're doing what we do, and a kind of an overview of every service that we've got. And if you just want the 2 minute read, you can hit it all on that overview page. And then from that point on, we've got more in-depth pages on our consulting services, on our managed services. If you want to, just read about us, we've got, kind of the history and why we came to be and what our goals are as an organization. And then, like I indicated, we've got an insight page that we're updating regularly with, blogs about recent events, best practices, things that you can do. We want to make sure that when you come to our site, it's not just to find something to be sold to you or to potentially have to talk to somebody about. You can get a lot of benefit by just reading our insights and looking at what we're talking about, and you could walk away with new information just from that.
And whether you end up doing business with us or not, and of course we hope you do, I encourage you, as an avid LinkedIner myself, start following Robert Smith on LinkedIn. Great subject matter expert, and Robert, you're always posting very valuable information and tips and new news on your LinkedIn site. Again, that's Robert Smith. And as far as the phone number, Tony, same 800 number as with ProMiles, correct?
Yes.
And that is 800-324-8588. I need my readers, need my cheaters to read that. 800
That is funny.
324 8588. I feel like
Hey,
I'm
I do
flunking a
notice you
vision
do
test
have
here.
you've got more gray than me. If you really look, I still got
I got
dark in some
white.
areas. You have no, yeah,
It
you
ain't
just white.
gray, it's
You're
freaking white
almost
and it's
like a
falling out.
Santa.
See,
That's cool.
you guys are making jokes, but I've got it all through here and on the sides. It's just it's camouflaged with some of the darker colors.
Well, that's it. Hey, Robert, you know what? You know what I feel like? I feel like a very special movie star. You know, you see walking out, and around him, he's got these great big guys in suits to protect me. That's what you and Mark Hoffman has given me the feeling when it comes to our cyber folks and y'all's teams and how you guys are protecting us. It is. It's like walking around with these great big bouncers or something in front of you that's going to protect you, from the other folks. And so if anybody, wants to feel just that little bit better feeling than knowing that, somebody does come to take a punch at you, you got people to protect. You need a cyber expert. You need people that start looking into this, and you better look in it more today before everything does get even more connected and more controlling when it comes to software and technology. So get your own, Robert Smith, dress him up like, in a nice suit and dark glasses, like the Men in Black kind of
Yeah,
look
not to
like.
get too
That's what we
sappy,
need.
Tony. I don't want Robert's head to swell here, but you're right. It really does feel good as an employee of a company, especially one that's prone to make moronic mistakes once in a while and open emails that I'm not supposed to or attachments. It's nice to know that we have someone of your expertise, Robert, and Mark, of course, as well, that literally has our back on a daily
Yeah.
basis. But Robert, with that said, just kind of close us out here with, again, your overview of the real cybersecurity threats right now facing the trucking industry and what your new cyber division can do to provide solutions.
Excellent. Yep. So, like we were saying, I mean, right now, when we looked at the statistics, 55% of organizations in this space are worried about cyber risks. It is not just a small percentile. There are a lot of entities that are
Yes.
concerned. And, like Stephen mentioned
Mhm.
early on, 25% have been victims of organizations just in general have been victims in the last 12 months from a cyber incident, a cyber risk, a cyber attack. Something has happened that has negatively impacted those folks and they've reported it. That doesn't include all of the businesses and organizations that have a problem that something comes up and it just flies under the radar and it never gets reported. It never becomes mainstream news. It's never talked
Wow.
about. So we've got a lot that's going on right now. And again, we talked about ransomware. We talked about just in general starting to look at good cybersecurity practices and holistic practices for organizations, everything from pen testing to agent-based protections, doing those types of things and having capabilities. The divisions, the ProMiles Cyber Division. Tony mentions having somebody in a suit, having me. Stephen mentions having your own practitioner, your own Robert Smith. The good news is you don't have to go out and find these individuals.
We're here.
We can provide that same level of service, that same level of capability without having to have somebody sit in your office 24/7,
Yeah.
365, right? And we are here to help. We're here to again share information to help an organization. If you've just got a question, again, if you just want to do a 30-minute discussion and say, you know what, yeah, let me just see what you're all about. Let me see what you're thinking. I mean, we're here, and that's
I got to interrupt you,
really what we're
Robert,
the most
because
excited about.
Tony, the other cool thing about Robert and Mark is I've dealt with a lot of IT people over the years and a few cybersecurity people. And Robert is approachable. He doesn't talk down to you. He makes it understandable to us average Joes out there. And that to me, when I'm choosing a consultant, that's as much important to me as to how am I going to have good interpersonal communication with this person and not be talked down to, not talked above, and not walk away not understanding it. Robert breaks it down, doesn't he, Tony?
He sure does. And the other thing that he made us realize is we were kind of freaking out too over the last, 10, 15 years as we're doing more and more and more around our cybersecurity. But what really scared us was, oh my gosh, for us to do this ourselves, the amount of money we have to spend on licenses,
Mm.
technology, contractors to come in and do things. I mean, you're talking a lot of money. So one of the things that Robert's idea was is if we could help bring those same kind of solutions to everybody at a much, much, much cheaper price than them trying to do it on their own, more people are going to do it. And that's the other thing that's exciting here. We've made relationships with these folks where if you went to them yourself, you're going to have to pay a lot of money for these protection for these guys in suits to be up there to help you. But if you come into our group, just like transportation has always done, and you bring everybody together and you offer everybody a solution, then we can all share and aggregate this, which means that all the money we've invested, all the time and the millions we put into this, we're basically handing it to you guys. Here's technology. Here's things that you can use that you don't have to go spend the money like ProMiles did to do it because we have the technology. We can run the reports. We can look. And trust me, guys, there's more data to look at than you ever will be able to look at. You need systems to help you pinpoint the outliers. And so to do this, it ain't cheap, but you partner with a consulting group, even if it's not ProMiles Cyber, get with somebody that does this cyber. Because a lot of times they'll talk, they'll give you answers, they'll give you free advice, they'll point you in the right direction just to have a phone call. But engage somebody, start asking questions before you're asking the wrong question. How do we go back and recover these three shippers, respect that we just lost because of these problems? That took me 20 years and my dad to make that happen. He's not here. What are we going to do? So trust in somebody, even if it ain't ProMiles Cyber. Google cybersecurity. I need help. Find somebody to start having those conversations because once you do, you're going to get nervous. You're going to get worried. You're going to start freaking out. Oh my gosh, look at all this negative and bad things. But then take the next step and listen to what they have to tell you and then do some of it, just a little. And when you start seeing things get better and better in your world, you know you did the right move by getting into cyber and getting it looked at. Don't just push it to the side and sweep it under the rug and think it's just going to go away and it's not going to be you. Because, guys, I was attacked here over the last few weeks on Thanksgiving, and we lost $600 to somebody that was going to bring us firewood. Okay? Firewood. And at the end of the day, they got the $600. Their website's down the next day. Their phone's been disconnected, but I've already PayPal'd them the money. So yes, even
And we
me,
razzed you pretty good
spent all
about
this
that
on
too.
cybersecurity.
I hope Megan, our producer, will
Yes.
throw up the fire log meme that I
Yeah,
threw at
you
my
need
boss.
to because it took me 3 groups to go to get good firewood, buddy. 3 groups, and I thought I'm pretty smart at
We'll
this.
save that for the
Watch
next
your back,
podcast. It's
people.
actually an interesting story. But Robert, I'm going to give you the final word because if I give Tony the final word, this podcast will never end. So, Robert, I just want to close by saying I am so super excited about introducing not only trucking companies, but anybody in the transportation industry that's related to you. You might be a pilot car company or a permit service. Give ProMiles a try here because, as Tony said, we've been in this industry for 30 years. But Robert, I'm excited. I'll give you closing words here.
Thanks, Stephen and Tony. Yep. The only thing I can say right now is if in your cybersecurity journey, make ProMiles Cyber a cybersecurity destination. So.
Thank you, Robert.
All
Thank you, Cool
right.
Cat.